Hello, fellow Movie Crusaders, and welcome to another episode of Sean's Movie Crusades. My name's Sean Wasserkrug, and today we're going to go over the top 25 movies of 2019. Yes, I know it's mid-January, but there were still a lot of movies that came out in January that were last year's films that I needed to catch up on and watch in order to give you a proper top 25 list for the year. Now there are still even now some movies that I did not get to see that I really wanted to, mainly in particular Honey Boy. Just not available in my area, and I don't think it comes out until like on digital till February, and I just wasn't going to wait that long to make this video. So this list is just of movies that I have seen this year. So there's no ratings or rankings of films that I have not seen. So if it is in this top 25, I have seen it. I have probably reviewed it as well on the channel. Now with this top 25, it's not rated in terms of the review score that I gave it. That's part of the factor. It's review score plus overall enjoyment / entertainment of the movie itself. While there are some movies that were rated very high because of how the film was done overall, it probably in terms of rewatchability isn't quite as high, so therefore it drops a little bit lower on the list. So as I'm going through this top 25, there's going to be some movies that you'd be like, well, Sean, you rated this movie that was like at 17 higher than this movie that was at number 11. And a lot of that is just basically because, while yes, I liked that movie more in terms of a review score, this one, I just had a lot more enjoyable time watching, and will definitely go back and rewatch a lot more than I would, let's say, the movie that's rated higher but ranked lower on this list. So keep that in mind. It's not saying that any of these movies are bad. This was a fantastic year in movies. This was actually probably last year's list was really easy to make. It was a clear cut, boom, 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 boom. This year, it was so hard making this list because there was just so many fantastic films. When I first started off doing this list, it was at 40. I narrowed it down to 30, and then finally narrowed it down to 25. So that's kind of how we got this broken down. Normally, I would do a top 20, but there were some movies that I just really wanted to talk about that were just outside of the top 25 or outside of the top 20, which is why I moved it to a top 25 list. So in this video, we're going to do 25 through 11, and then we're going to have a separate video for the top 10, which will be coming out pretty much right after this one. So you guys can kind of watch these all in once if you want to do that. If you guys just want to jump to a certain movie and hear me talk about it, feel free to look at the time links below and you'll be able to jump from there to see what numbers are what. But yeah, let's go ahead and jump on into my number 25 movie of 2019. Also, spoiler warning for pretty much almost all these movies. A lot of them have been out relatively for at least a month, if not close to a month or longer. So spoiler warnings outside of one film on this list. So I'll do my best not to spoil pretty much too much anything on that one, if at all. But definitely spoiler warning for all these movies coming up. So going into number 25 on the list, while it was not necessarily a high-rated movie for me, I literally could not leave this off my list. Coming at number 25 is Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker. Now, for me, like I said, a huge Star Wars fan. I mean, if you're a follower of the channel, you've seen that I went through, outside Last Jedi, because we still can't get Jay and Kirk on the same time scale. I love Star Wars. We've talked about every Star Wars episodic film outside of Last Jedi. And so naturally, this had to be on the list. I was hoping this would be higher on the list, but Rise of Skywalker is not a perfect film by any means. I feel like J.J. Abrams really had to come in and try to retcon / fix what happened with Last Jedi, which I didn't think he had to do. And that's what happened with the first 45 minutes of the film that I felt like. Now, I will admit that watching this a second time is better than watching it the first time, because I think you're a little prepared for what you're about to see. So I did have a better enjoyment watching it the second time out compared to the first time, which is why it ended up on the list. Like I said, there are plenty of movies that are not on this list that I had rated higher when I did the reviews, but this one definitely had to be on the list. Like I said, I love Star Wars. I Loved the movie for the most part. It's still in my top 5 of Star Wars films. Like I said, the cast I thought did a great job. Like I said, fun action sequences, emotional at the right moments. Yes, there were certain scenes that should not have been in the film, or certain scenes they should have elaborated more on. But nonetheless, it's a Star Wars movie. I enjoyed it quite a bit for the most part, even though it has its shortcomings. But that is why it is number 25 on the list. Going to number 24, this one is, if anyone watched my most surprising films of 2019, this was definitely on the list. It was one of the top ones on the list, and it comes in at number 24, and that is the movie Crawl. When this movie came out, it just looked like your everyday generic animal horror movie. You know, whether it be a shark or alligator, piranhas, what have you. It just looked like another generic one of those films. But when it came out, there was just so much buzz around it that it was a lot of fun to watch, and that it was actually a good movie. So I went out of my way to watch it, and I could not have been more surprised, hence why it was on my most surprising of 2019 list. But this was one of those movies that it was outside of my 20, but I had to talk about this movie because I really wanted it to be noticed and recognized, kind of like how Upgrade was last year for me, or like Annihilation, where those were two movies last year that just did not get talked about by enough people, that I really want to make sure it got talked about on the show. So, and The Crawl is going to be one of those for me. I think Crawl did a great job for what it was supposed to do. It was not long. It did what it did, and it got out. I think the two lead characters, Kaya Scodelario, who played Haley, and of course Barry Pepper, who played Dave, I thought they both did a great job for what they were supposed to do in the film. I think the action sequences, the jump scares, I'm not a big jump guy, but I think the alligator jump scares did a great job overall. And it kept you on the edge of your seat, and an uneasy edge of your seat throughout the entire film, which did its job for me. Never at a point where I was going, okay, this is starting to get a little tacky, or this is starting to lose its thunder. I felt like it did exactly what it was supposed to do in the time given, and it was the most enjoyable film to watch, and that is why it's number 24 on the list. Going to number 23, this was also on my most surprising list, and that is Netflix's Dolomite Is My Name. I will admit I was a little bummed when the Oscar nominations came out this week and Eddie Murphy was not on the list. I felt like he did enough in this film to get nominated, but sadly that was not the case. I thought Eddie Murphy did a fantastic job in this film. I think it was the first time in a long time where we got to see Eddie Murphy really put on a great performance, and B, a good movie. I mean, if you don't count the Shrek films. I think the cast, it's got a fantastic cast with it, with Eddie Murphy, Keegan-Michael Key, Mike Epps, Craig Robinson, Titus Burgess, Divine, Joy Randolph, who I think could have been nominated for supporting actress if they really wanted to give it to her. Cody Smith-McPhee, Snoop Dogg, and of course Wesley Snipes, who I thought was great in it as well. It had that great kind of joy, funny, heartfelt sadness. You had everything mixed into it, and it was a damn enjoyable film to watch. And I think Eddie Murphy, by doing this film, put him in the right direction towards what we might get from him down in the future. And I hope this is kind of a resurgence to his career, and we hope that we see more out of this coming from Eddie Murphy and less of what's been like the last 10, 15 years, not counting the Shrek films. So if you guys have not checked out Dolomite, like I said, it's on Netflix. Go out of your way to check this movie out, because you will not be disappointed. It is one of the best films of the year, and that is why it is at number 23 on the list. Coming in at number 22, or 21, actually, I'm sorry. Yeah, Dolomite, 22, my bad. Coming in at number 22 is Frozen 2. Now, for me, I was not excited to see this movie at all, because, I mean, while I thought Frozen was a solid animated film, it did kind of just beat you into the ground by the end of it, to the point where I didn't want to watch Frozen. I didn't want to listen to any of the music. So when Frozen 2 came out, I was not in a excited mood to see it. It was kind of one of those, it's like, well, I have to see it so I can review it, so let's just go get this out of the way. And I was pleasantly surprised. I had a lot of fun watching it. I saw it twice, actually, and both times I had a good time watching it. It had emotional moments. It made me tear up at least twice while watching it. I thought the music was better this time around. I loved at least 3 of the songs I can think of. You got Into the Unknown, which is an Oscar-nominated song. Lost in the Woods, I think was fantastic. I loved that one. And then I can't remember the name of the one big song number where she finally finds out who the voice is. I'm blanking on it, but I loved that song. I thought the voice cast that came back did a great job. Animation-wise, it is one of the best animated-looking films of the year. Visually, it was just stunning throughout. And I had a blast watching this movie. It's still in theaters, I believe. So if you guys have not seen Frozen 2, if you haven't seen it now, then you're probably not a fan of it. Because I guarantee you, if you are a fan, you probably have seen it, if not once, but twice at this time. But that is why it was number 22 on the list, because it exceeded my expectations compared to what I thought it was going into. And I had a lot of fun, and it's definitely one that I will check on multiple times in the future. Coming in at number 21, this one was actually in my top 10 for quite a while, but it progressively started to drop as more movies came out. And coming in at 21 is Spider-Man Far From Home. I love Spider-Man. He's probably my favorite superhero outside of Wolverine. And I love Tom Holland as Peter Parker / Spider-Man. I thought this movie was great. I thought Jake Gyllenhaal did a fantastic job as Mysterio. A broad storyline, I think, worked really well. The continual storyline plot going through that Peter can't get out of the shadow of the death of Robert Downey Jr.'s Tony Stark, I thought did a great job of trying to get the character to move forward, but not to forget his past. It was a little slow for the first half of the film, but then once it got into that second gear, it was definitely a very enjoyable film. And it has one of my favorite scenes of 2019, where the first time Mysterio does the illusions on Spider-Man. That shot, frame for frame, is one of my favorite shots of this year. I love that entire sequence. And easily the best mid-credit scene of any MCU movie. When this movie, I feel sorry for the people. Now, obviously, it's out on disc now, so it's fine. But I felt so sorry for the people who left the theater before the mid-credits started, because you leave this movie and it ends all happy-go-lucky, and then you stay for the mid-credits scene, and it's an entirely different ending. Because once we get J.K. Simmons as J.J. Jameson, which was fantastic, but then we get Mysterio giving away the identity of Spider-Man, and that was insane, and I loved that ending. It puts Spider-Man, what we know is going to happen with Spider-Man, completely in the unknown. We have no idea what we're expecting now with the Spider-Man films, and that's beautiful that we don't know. And then, of course, you have the actual end credit scene, which puts all of Phase 4 in question. We have no idea what we're about to see, and it definitely makes you excited for what MCU has coming up down the road. But yeah, I love Spider-Man Far From Home. I thought it did a great job of interjecting not just I think he did a better job of getting Mary Jane with his Zendaya done better in this film compared to the first film. I just liked how they integrated the rest of the cast outside of Tom Holland and Jake Gyllenhaal. I thought they did a great job making it kind of more of a class movie than just a Spider-Man film, and that's why I really enjoyed it, and that's why it ends up at number 21 on the list. Now going into the top 20. Coming in at number 20, this is a Best Picture nominee and potentially a favorite for the Oscars, and that is Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I love Quentin Tarantino movies. Now, yes, some of them can be hit or miss. This one, to me, I still quite enjoyed quite a bit, but compared to other Tarantino films, it didn't quite hit the mark. But this one basically is saved by the grace of two fantastic acting performances by Leonardo DiCaprio and Brad Pitt, both nominated for this role as well, which I think Brad Pitt will probably win for it. It's got great scenes in the film. There's a scene with Leo as Rick Dalton talking to, I can't for the life of me remember this young little girl's name, but anyone who's seen the movie, the scene where Dalton is on set of the cowboy show and he just has that sit-down sequence where he's talking to that little girl, and then they go and they do that scene, to me was my favorite part of the film. I thought Leo did a phenomenal acting job in that scene. It was definitely my favorite. Brad Pitt does an incredible job throughout this entire film. I love the ending where they went completely against the script of what the actual historical things that happened. Could they have done this movie without Margot Robbie and the Sharon Tate storyline? Absolutely. Which I think that storyline is probably what hurt the film for me, because it did drag a little bit in the middle because of this particular storyline. If it had just been a buddy Hollywood film with Rick Dalton and Cliff Booth, I would have been all for it. The Sharon Tate storyline with her and her murders with the group, I think, while intriguing with Charles Manson and everything like that, I think that it took away from the film overall. But it still is a great Quentin Tarantino film. It's incredibly well acted by everyone in the film, and that is why it ends up at number 20 on the list. Coming in at number 19, we have a movie that I honestly, it's once again stayed in my top 10 for quite a long time, but it is at number 19, and that is John Wick Chapter 3 Parabellum. To me, my favorite John Wick film. There's so much amazing action sequences in this film. If it had not been for 1917, I feel like this movie should have been nominated for choreography. The fight scenes, the stunt work, everything in this movie was top notch and easily one of the best of the year. Keanu Reeves continues to be a badass as John Wick. Halle Berry shows off her skills as Sophia. That dog fight, her and John Wick and the two dogs sequence, I thought was incredible. Those dogs did a phenomenal job in the sequences that they were doing. The knife fighting scene in the beginning of the film, the horse fighting scene. There's so much to like about this movie. The end, I love that the end of the film was like a video game where you had to go through levels of bosses to get to the main boss, almost literally climbing stairs and fighting sequence after sequence from the guys from the raid. I loved this movie. This movie was so much fun to watch. The reason why it dropped out of the top 10 and a little bit lower is because there were certain things in the movie that bothered me, mainly what's her name? Its name. Asia Kate Dillon as the adjudicator. I could not stand her performance. She was the worst part of this film. Every time she was on screen, I just was immediately annoyed. That was the reason why the film hurt, in my opinion. It went from being a near perfect film to just a great film because of Asia's performance, and I just couldn't get behind that character. That character stopped the flow of the film, and they could have gotten any other character with a little more emotion or just better acting. And personally, I know Asia's a good actor per se, because I mean she's been nominated for awards, but in this film, I felt like that Asia was clearly the weakest part of the film, and every time she was on screen, it deterred from the rest of the film. And that's why John Wick Chapter 3 dropped down to 19 when it could have easily stayed a top 10 film throughout the entire year. Nonetheless, John Wick Chapter 3 Parabellum was fantastic. Anyone who loves action films, shoot-'em-up films, if you have not watched the John Wick trilogy, go out of your way to do that. But definitely check out John Wick Chapter 3 Parabellum, because it is one of the most fun and exciting action films of 2019. Going to number 18, also my most surprising of 2019, goes El Camino, a Breaking Bad movie. This was a movie that I did not know that was going to happen. I had heard rumors of it, but didn't know they were actually making it. And then all of a sudden the trailer came out, and then the movie came out, and I was so worried about this movie being good because I'm a huge Breaking Bad fan, and I felt like it had a near perfect finale. Being the only thing that kept it from being perfect is us not knowing what happened to Jesse, which is what this film basically does for us, is it ties up all the loose ends to Jesse and gives Jesse the proper send-off to his character. And I was so worried about this movie, thinking that doing too much with the character would basically ruin the perfect ending that Breaking Bad had. And nonetheless, this film did a fantastic job. The way it was shot by Vince Gilligan, Or Gilliam. I thought Aaron Paul did a fantastic job as Jesse. Everyone in the film did an incredible job. The way it was shot, the way it was scripted, the way the scenes played out. The Mexican standoff scene is easily also one of my favorite film scenes of the year. And it gave a beautiful, complete ending to the Breaking Bad story. While the Breaking Bad story is still going on with Better Call Saul, the actual Breaking Bad story between Walt and Jesse finally gets a beautiful and well-earned ending. And that is why this is number 19 or 18. 18, yeah, on the list. Going to number 17 is Brittany Runs a Marathon. It was my number one most surprising film of 2019. Like I said, this film, I talked about this movie enough, honestly, but I'm going to do it again in case you guys didn't watch those videos. I feel like this movie did a fantastic job of giving you guys a taste of motivation. We have Brittany, played by Jillian Bell, who's kind of like a slouch, just goes out, drinks, does drugs, lazy, no motivation in her life. And when she goes to the doctor to try to score Adderall, her life is thrown upside down when the doctor tells her that she needs to lose 55 pounds in order to not die at an early age. So she goes and starts trying to run. She joins running groups, and eventually it leads her to try and decide to run for the New York City Marathon. Like I said, I'm not a fan of Jillian Bell normally, but I loved her in this movie. I loved the whole cast in this film. And this film really motivated me and motivated other people that I recommended this film to, in terms of trying to not necessarily turn your life around, but to try and make yourself better by either running and trying to lose weight, or try to just take ownership of the bullshit in your life and be a better person. Try to be the better you. And I thought Brittany Runs a Marathon did a fantastic job of that. It's incredibly motivating. I got emotional at the end of it. I loved this film, and I'm so glad I got to see it, because it was a movie that I was going to just kind of ignore. But eventually I saw it. It's on Amazon Prime for free. So anyone's got Prime, you can easily just pop on there and play it right away. But yeah, it was one of those movies where I was not expecting anything from it, and I got so much out of it. And that is why it is number 17 on the best of 2019 list. Coming in at number 16, another movie that spent almost all of 2019 in the top 10, but it comes in at number 16, and that is Jordan Peele's Us. Now, I know Get Out was kind of the big movie of 2017, and it got an Oscar nomination and stuff like that, but I feel like Us is the better film overall for me. I think it is directed better than Get Out. I think it's got an incredible cast behind it. I think Lupita Nyong'o got screwed out of an Oscar nomination. I think she definitely should have been it over Cynthia Erivo for Harriet. I thought Winston Duke did a great job. Elizabeth Moss, Shadi Wright-Joseph, Evan Alex. All these characters had to play dual parts. I think they all did their dual parts perfectly. I loved the elements of the story and how you didn't get all the answers. And it's watching this film definitely leaves a lot of things open to discussion, and there's no clear-cut answers. It leaves so many things up to interpretation. You literally could sit down and talk to a person for over an hour about this film, of just coming up with possibilities and potential questions and answers from the film that you just saw, because this movie's not going to come out with a sequel, so we're not going to get those answers, and we're not going to be able to look this stuff up. So there's so many things that happen in this film. Now, I know that annoyed a lot of people, because a lot of people need to have everything answered for them, and this movie's just not going to do that. This movie's just it is what it is, and it's up to you to fill in the blanks from there on out. And I think Us did a great job of that. It kept you intrigued, it kept you attentive the whole way through. And I think Us is easily one of the best films of the year. Like I said, it stayed in my top 10 for probably about 8 or 9 months. It was in my top 10 up until recently, because like I said, so many fantastic movies came out near the end of the year. But that is why it is number 16 on the list. If you guys have not seen Jordan Peele's Us yet, go out of your way to check this out. It is easily one of the best films of the year. Coming in at number 15 was another movie that spent a lot of time in my top 10, but it dropped down to 15, and that is Olivia Wilde's Booksmart. Now, a lot of people will probably say this is the female version of Superbad, which it is. But to me, it did one thing that Superbad didn't do. With Superbad, yes, we had a great friendship with Michael Cera and Jonah Hill, but I felt like Booksmart did a better job of making the friendship more believable between the two. I think Beanie Feldstein and Caitlin Dever did a better job of making that friendship look more like a legitimate friendship than Jonah Hill and Michael Cera. And then it also did a really good job of not just making the movie about these two characters, but about the rest of the high school kids in the film as well. They didn't overshadow Beanie or Caitlin's performances. They actually enhanced it and helped it. I thought Billy Lord did a phenomenal supporting job. Skylar Gizondo, did a fantastic job as Jared, and Billy Lord as Gigi. I felt like with Superbad, it was really just these two characters and McLovin, whereas with this one, you had these two amazing characters in Amy and Molly, and then it grew from there, and it made a great, well-rounded cast. Whereas with with Superbad, you have Jonah Hill, Michael Cera, Christopher Mintz-Plasse. I can never say McLovin's full name. And then, of course, you add the adult actors like Will Forte, Bill Hader, Seth Rogen, and, of course, Emma Stone. But I feel like this movie is going to be one of those movies that in 5, 10, even 15 years, we'll look back at Booksmart, and there's going to be so many actors who will be like, oh, I forgot that they were in this movie because they didn't have big parts. Olivia Wilde did a phenomenal directing job. This movie has a ton of heart. It's funny. It's got great scenes, great moments. And I think Booksmart is easily one of the best coming-of-age films that we've seen in quite a long time. It's not the best coming-of-age film this year. That will be coming up shortly. But it is definitely a fantastic film, and I think it is the better of the Superbadiest kind of films. And that is why it is number 15 on the list. Coming in at number 14 is a movie that also stayed in my top 25 for quite a while, and that is Peanut Butter Falcon. I love this movie. This movie is such a joy to watch. It's so heartfelt. It's fun, and it's just a happy movie. You got great standout performances by Shia LaBeouf and Zach Gottsagen. Dakota Johnson did a solid job in it. Bruce Dern, Thomas Hayden Church. I think with this film, it's all about trying to capture your dream and not letting anyone stop you because you're different. And I think Zach's character is a great kind of beacon of that, because obviously he's got Down syndrome, so everyone kind of wants to take care of him and hold him back and coddle him, and he just wants to be a normal kid and just go out and do what he wants to do, which in this case is join a professional wrestling school, which is near and dear to my heart. I feel like Shia LaBeouf, this was Shia LaBeouf's year of kind of just coming back out and saying, hey, I'm still this fantastic actor, take notice. And I thought Peanut Butter Falcon, he did a great job of that, playing Tyler. Now, I wish I could have saw Honey Boy, because I heard he was amazing in that as well. But I feel like the friendship between Zach and Tyler was incredibly well done. Like I said, Dakota Johnson as Eleanor, I thought was a nice kind of third wheel to the thing. The only thing I wasn't a big fan of this movie was I wasn't a fan of how the ending felt a little rushed and incomplete to a sense. But the journey all the way up to that point, to me, was 5 stars. And I love this film. Like I said, if you ever just enter in a down mood and you just want to feel good and kind of just enjoy yourself, Peanut Butter Falcon is definitely the way to go. And that is why it's number 14 on the list. Coming in at number 13 is a movie, once again, spent most of its time this year into my top 10, but it fell out of it over the last month. And that is Rocket Man. Now, for me, Bohemian Rhapsody, I love and hate. I love parts of it, and I hate other parts of it. Rocket Man, I felt, took that momentum of Bohemian Rhapsody and just elevated it. It sucks that Rocket Man's not getting the recognition that Bohemian Rhapsody did. And I think a lot of that has to do with release dates, because Bohemian Rhapsody got released in like November, December of last year, which was right around awards season, and Rocketman got released around was it like June, I think? May, yeah, right at the end of May, and I feel like that's hurt the film in itself. Taron Egerton, he won the Golden Globe for it. He could have been nominated for Best Actor, I feel. I thought his performance was one of my favorite performances of the year as Elton John. He actually sings the songs. He was able to look like Elton John a lot. I liked the fantasy style of this film, where when he would sing his songs, the whole world just kind of revolved around him at that point and became very fantastical. I loved Jamie Bell as Bernie Taupin. I thought Jamie Bell put on one of the better supporting performances of the year. That probably is going to go unrecognized, which sucks because I think he did a fantastic job. Richard Madden played a fantastic villain, as well as Bryce Dallas Howard as John Reed and Sheila John. I thought they did great in the film. The movie's just a lot of fun to watch. It's sad, but the musical numbers are very well done. The costume designs are fantastic. And it shows that with Elton John. I didn't think I was a fan of Elton John, but after watching this movie, I realized that there were so many songs of his that I actually really quite enjoyed. And it opened me up to being more of a fan to Elton John because I wasn't aware of how many songs he actually did personally. But that is why it's number 13 on the list. Like I said, it spent most of the year in the top 10, and Rocketman, easily one of my favorite films of 2019. Going to number 12, this is the one of those movies I said at the beginning of the film, or the beginning of the video, where I said it was one of the highest rated films of the year, but it drops down a little bit in terms of just enjoyment, rewatchability, and stuff like that, because this film is fantastic. It's an amazing film, but in terms of enjoyment, rewatchability, it's not one that I probably would watch more than just the initial time. That is Netflix's Marriage Story. This film, I knew it was going to be a great film when it came out. When I saw the first trailer, Adam Driver and Scarlett Johansson, who both got nominated for Oscars for this film, put on stellar performances in this movie about a couple that literally went from just being in love with each other to the inevitable breakup and very bad divorce, and then acceptance of the divorce in this film. You get to see both sides of the divorce through both of their understandings. You get to see their personal views and opinions of what's going on, which gives a nice balance. I do think Adam Driver gets a little bit more balance than Scarlett does. I feel like they do kind of aim Scarlett as the villain a little bit more in this movie when they should have probably balanced it out a little bit better. Laura Dern puts on a phenomenal supporting actress performance, which won her the Golden Globe and got her an Oscar nomination. Ray Liotta does a great job in supporting role as well. It's also got one of my favorite acted scenes of this year. Yes, I know a lot of people have made fun of this scene out of context, but their actual argument in the apartment around the 90-minute mark, that is probably one of the most brilliant / hard to watch 3-4 minute scenes of 2019 outside of this one scene that's coming up on the next movie on the list. I thought they both did a phenomenal job in that scene. Like I said, out of context, it looks ridiculous, but in context of what the film was doing at that point, this powder keg of emotion between these two characters eventually blew. And we got to watch these two just rip each other to shreds verbally. And it was such an incredible performance between these two. They both deserve the nominations that they got, potentially wins as well. And that is why Marriage Story, like I said, phenomenal film, deserves the rating that it got. But because it's a hard watch in terms of what you're watching, it drops out of the top 10 and right at the number 12 spot, because it's not a movie that I would really probably go back and rewatch, because it's not a fun movie to watch. So that is why it is out of the top 10, which it's been in the top 10 since the last time I released my rankings, and it dropped to the number 12 spot. Going to number 11, and the final movie in this video is going to be Dr. Sleep. Dr. Sleep, that was definitely a film, like I said, surprising. I'm not a huge Shining fan, but it was one of those films that I saw the trailer, and what made me go see it was not because it was a sequel to The Shining, but it was because Ewan McGregor was in it. I love Ewan McGregor. I love Rachel Ferguson. I thought they both are fantastic performers. And knowing that they were going to be in the film made me want to go see it. And when I went to see this film, I was blown away by how good it was. For anyone who's watchers of the channel, we did a non-spoiler and a spoiler review of this film. So if you guys watched Dr. Sleep and liked it as much as I did, check out the spoiler review for that, where myself, Kurt Kolakowski, and Brian Michaels talked about this film at great length. Like I said, Rebecca Ferguson, I think, should potentially have gotten a supporting actress nomination in this film. I thought she did a phenomenal job as Rose the Hat. Ewan McGregor did a great job as Dan Torrance. Kylie Curran as Abra Stone, I thought was fantastic. I loved Rose the Hat's group / gang. Cliff Curtis as Billy Freeman, Dan's best friend. There's so much I like about this movie. The balance between horror and magic, I thought worked really well. The whole third act where they go back to the Overlook Hotel, I thought looked great. The hardest watched scene of 2019 with the murder of Bradley Trevor, played by Jacob Tremblay. The hardest scene to watch of 2019, but it was done brilliantly. Mike Flanagan, who directed this film, did a stellar job. I love this movie. It's just outside of the top 10 because those top 10 movies were just so incredibly well done that they just had to earn that top 10 spot, and that's why this is just outside of the top 10. But you guys have not seen Dr. Sleep, go out of your way to see this film. It is one of the best of the year. It's 2.5 hours, but I feel like it's a well-deserved 2.5 hours. I feel like they had so much story that they were able to put into this, and it told a great story throughout, and that is why it is number 11 of the 2019 top 25. So going back through the list, here is 11 through 25. 25 was Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker. 24 was Crawl. 23 was Dolomite Is My Name. 22 is Frozen 2. 21 was Spider-Man Far From Home. 20 was Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. 19 was John Wick Chapter 3 Parabellum. 18 was El Camino, a Breaking Bad movie. 17 was Brittany Runs a Marathon. 16 was Jordan Peele's Us. 15 was Booksmart. 14 was Peter Butter Falcon. 13 was Rocket Man. 12 was Marriage Story. And 11 was Dr. Sleep. I hope you guys enjoyed this ranking. If you guys did, go and hit that like button. If you guys feel like this ranking is worth sharing, go and hit that share button. But most importantly, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe button to the channel so you guys stay up to date with all the latest videos that pop up on Sean's Movie Crusades. And of course, don't forget to follow us on all the social media outlets you see below. Obviously, coming up next, we have the top 10 movies of 2019. So we will go into the top 10 films of that. Also, coming out this week, we've got Doolittle. We'll see how that is. And of course, one of my most anticipated films of 2020, Bad Boys for Life. So be on the lookout for reviews for those. And until next time, in case we don't see you, good morning, good afternoon, and good night, Movie Crusaders.